This is North Georgia's News Talk.
Welcome back, folks. Just wrapped up our conversation with Georgia tight end. I think he's transitioned. I think we can transition him from being like a former West Hall or West Hall. You know what I mean? He's transitioned. Georgia, he's signed. He's signed on the dotted line. Georgia tight end Hunter Atkinson. That concludes our National Signing Day week, and what a week it has been. I've loved highlighting the young athletes that are taking their skills to the next level in an athletic capacity this week. So proud to have been able to have them all in. And obviously, where they're all concerned, we'll be keeping up with what goes on in the future for each and every one of them. We're joined now by Brandon Reed, editor for Race Week Illustrated. He's in studio with us. He's in our WDUN studios as we continue Game On at 7:35 on this chilly Thursday evening. Matt Weaver, motorsports journalist, columnist for SBNation and Popular Speed, joining us via the phone lines. And these two men, the reason we have them in studio on the phone together is because they have differing opinions where the changes to the chase for the Sprint Cup are concerned. This is something we've been talking about since last week when the news came out that they were going to go to a March Madness format, a 16-team playoff format, if you will. Brandon Reed came on with us that night, said, I don't like it. We're not a stick and ball sport. But a lot of fans have come out and said they do like it and things of that nature. So, Brandon, I really want you to start us off and tell us initially what it is that you dislike about the changes to the chase.
Well, first off, it's a gimmick. And the more gimmicks you throw into any sport, you move away from sporting event and closer to a sporting product. You know, this isn't the WWE. It's supposed to be automobile racing, and it's its own athletic endeavor. And the more gimmicks that you throw in, it takes away from what it's supposed to be. And the big problem that I have is instead of focusing in on the racing product on the track and trying to make it better, because it's not very good right now, they're essentially holding up a jangly toy, something that's nice and shiny, saying, hey, look over here, look over here. And that's not, to me, I don't think it's going to fly. And as far as the fans ringing in saying, yes, we want it depends on where you look. A poll on National Speed Sport News says that 53% don't like it, 30% say, maybe, 16% say yes, and 4% say, when's football come back?
We're going to get to why Brandon thinks the racing on the track isn't good momentarily, but we want to welcome in Matt Weaver. Matt, thanks so much for being willing to join us tonight. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Katie. Brandon, good to talk to you guys. You know, when listening to Brandon, it's a conversation we had privately, many times before, and to be honest, I can't dispute a lot of that. If left up to me, I wouldn't have made the changes, but when NASCAR addressed it and they throw it all out there on the line, I was in Charlotte for media tour last week, and they explained their reasoning. You start to look at some of the merit, and on paper, if this goes all according to plan, and in NASCAR world, that's hard to come by, this could be really good. This is a scenario now that is going to make winning matter, just like it does at the dirt track level, at the short track level, where it's win or go home. There's no points racing. There's no, I got good fourth place money. You've got to win, essentially, to make this playoff format, and nothing else matters. And then once you make it to the playoffs, you've got to win to advance to the next round. And I think that's a beautiful, forgotten thing in NASCAR. And, yes, certainly I think this is a Band-Aid over the real problem, which is the aero package and the on-track product. But what I think you're going to see happen now is that you're going to have cars that were running 10th to 15th place late in the race when your leaders come in to get brand new tires. They're going to go out there and say, we're not going to try tires. We want to stay out front and just see if we can make it stick, like a few races we've seen in years past where you get that great battle because the faster car on new tires just couldn't get around the mid-pack car with old tires. And I think that's kind of their Band-Aid approach to fixing the racing. So it's not solving the problem, but NASCAR hopes that it'll create more excitement, even if it is somewhat manufactured.
I've heard both of you use the phrase solving the problem, or Brandon said put a Band-Aid on the problem. I want to start with you, Matt, and then we'll go to Brandon. What is the problem?
Well, I think NASCAR is doing their absolute best to ensure that the racing product that you see every single week, is the best that it can possibly be. But the problem is multi-front. And, you look at the great track that you guys have up there in Atlanta, and it's the perfect track that NASCAR would like to go to, in that it is a speedway. It's 1.5 miles, but the surface is very old. And, NASCAR runs on a lot of these mile-and-a-half speedways now, and they got through this phase here recently where they had to repave each and every track. And so when you have that brand-new surface, it creates only one line of racing, so the guys are single file all the way through the field. You can't choose high line, low line, middle line, and as a result, the guy who typically gets out front, whether it's through tire strategy, fuel strategy, or what have you, they get out in that clean air with the aerodynamics of the cars today, and you can't get around them. And it doesn't matter what kind of car you have sitting third, fourth, and fifth. You could have the best car of the field, but you can't get to first, purely based on aerodynamics and the lack of grooves. And a lot of tracks, Texas and Michigan, Kansas, all come to mind, brand new surfaces, and you just can't pass. And that's the real problem that NASCAR has to address here over the next 5 years, try to eliminate that aerodynamic dependency.
We're talking with Brandon Reed, editor for Race Week Illustrated, Matt Weaver, motorsports journalist and columnist for SBNation and Popular Speed. On Game On, 7:41 as we continue on WDU. And you mentioned Atlanta Motor Speedway, Matt. I had Ed Clark on the show earlier this week, the president for Atlanta Motor Speedway, of Atlanta Motor Speedway. And let me tell you what, he was fired up about these changes. Absolutely loved the changes to the chase for the Sprint Cup, and loved what it will mean come Labor Day weekend when the Sprint Cup Series Nationwide Series comes to the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, I asked Matt, want you to weigh in too, Brandon. What's the problem, and why is this just putting a Band-Aid on it?
Well, again, the problem is that we're not seeing good competition for the most part on the speedways, much as Matt described. And it's kind of like the emperor with his new clothes. NASCAR is walking around saying, there's not a problem. Look how pretty my clothes are. And instead, they're walking around in their boxer shorts. The product on the racetrack, for the most part, week to week, is not exciting. And instead of addressing those issues and saying, what can we do to these cars and what can we do to these tracks to try and facilitate more competitive racing, they're going in a whole other direction, and they're trying to essentially take the focus off that. And what can you do? You can run narrower tires. You can raise the cars up, do away with a lot of the aero issue. Matt, you've had a lot of drivers tell you, chop half of the spoiler off and put it back behind the wheel. Make the drivers drive. And, I think that would be some good first steps towards getting there. We did not even see much in the way of drafting practice at Daytona, for goodness sakes, a few weeks ago during testing. So we don't know what we're walking into here in a couple of weeks.
Neither one of you have mentioned something that I honestly believe might be at the, or at least in the top five where the forefront of these changes are concerned, and that is bringing in a broader audience. This makes the Sprint Cup Series more appealing to a bigger audience. Matt, would you agree with that?
I don't think so. I think that racing, for better or worse, racing has always been an island unto itself. And I think, recent history has shown that when you create a deal like the Chase, or you have a driver like Jeff Gordon in the mid-'90s catch fire, you get a sort of hipster fan. And, I have no problem with the fan that comes in for 2 or 3 years, gets his fill, buys some of the product, goes to a race or two, and then ultimately leaves. I think that's great for the sport to be able to expose, NASCAR to a different set of eyeballs. But I think NASCAR has taken the approach that we need to be more accessible to football fans, to baseball fans, and instead of trying to make the sport as appealing to racing fans as possible, they have lost so many traditional, old-school grassroots Southern fans over the past 15, 20 years, and the chase isn't going to make them come back. The Sweet 16 on wheels isn't going to be the solution. Those fans have walked away and gone back to short track racing because what they're looking for is a competitive, exciting on-track product with characters that are both engaging and relatable. And I think, and NASCAR's aware of it, NASCAR needs to get back to those type of personalities and that kind of racing. And they are making changes to their car, and they are allowing the drivers within, reason on some occasions to speak their mind more. Now, Denny Hamlin would disagree. But I think the changes we saw during this off-season are not quite an answer to the primary problems, like Brandon said.
The broader audience I was speaking of, the broader market, were those football fans, those baseball fans that otherwise aren't interested in racing. I guarantee you they're going to be tuned in that November 16th race at Homestead when there are only 4 teams racing. The winner wins the Sprint Cup. That's the attention span we have for sport. That's why you only tune in to Game 7s. That's why you only watch the NBA Finals. That's why the Super Bowl is a big party and people couldn't care less about the regular season. So that is the broader audience that I'm talking about. Do you think that's in NASCAR's plans at all, Brandon?
No. I think NASCAR's main reason for this came out with their press release, which was when they quoted ESPN as saying, we have been encouraging NASCAR to go to a playoff system for years now. When ESPN said last year, guys, when bidding came up for the package, ESPN said, guys, we don't want it. We're not interested. They did not even bid. And I think NASCAR has done this to try and keep ESPN interested and, in essence, stay on SportsCenter. That has been one of their biggest issues over the years, is to keep their product in that vein. I don't think it's going to bring in any more. The sport has been big time for 25, 30 years now. The first flag-to-flag televised race was in 1979. It's been on ESPN for as long as anybody can remember. If you're a stick and ball fan and you don't care about racing, this is not going to bring you on board. You might come in and flip and watch, 5 minutes of the race, but, unless there's something really, really interesting happening right then, you're going to say, when's the next football game?
And so much as I believe that this is going to bring in a broader audience, I can't disagree with what Brandon said. You're not going to tune in for the whole race. You're going to tune in for part of the race. And racing wants those fans that are going to tune in for the whole race. And don't forget, folks, WDUN, your home of NASCAR. We have each and every nationwide series race, each and every Sprint Cup series race right here on our airwaves, AM 550, FM 102.9, WDUN. Matt, thank you so much for your insight. Thanks for joining us tonight and arguing, sort of, with our buddy Brandon Reed over here. You have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you, Katie. See you, Brandon.
See you, Matt.
And Brandon, as always, we appreciate you being our racing guru and setting us up with Matt Weaver. Again, folks, motorsports journalist, columnist for SBNation and Popular Speed. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Weaver, SBN, the handle. You can find our buddy Brandon Reed on Twitter at RW Illustrated. That the handle for Brandon. Other than being fired up about these changes, you doing well, buddy?
Doing great.
I'm glad to hear it.
Let me put a very quick point on it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a fan of this, these are the criteria that NASCAR has laid out for the champion. So whatever team executes best under these rules, they are the champion. No questions asked. They are the champion based on what the criteria set. So in that vein, I'm fine with it. So
fantastic. Brandon, we always appreciate your insight. Love it when you come join us in studio. Folks, when we come back, we're going to wrap up Game On, hopefully with Banks County girls basketball coach Jerry King. Come back and join us on WDUN.